So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Exonation, my guest this hour is Tom Hatsis. His website is psychedelicwitch.com. First of all, Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great hour with you. Thank you very much for sharing this wealth of information that I would imagine very few people listening today had ever heard of. But I do suggest that they go to your website and definitely buy your books. Are your books available on Amazon.com as well?
They are. They're available on the website, on my website. They're available on Amazon and at fine pagan and Wiccan bookstores everywhere.
All righty. A third book that you wrote, in the genre that we're talking about tonight, is Microdosing Magic. And how does microdosing differ from, microdosing magic?
So microdosing is just the practice of taking small amounts of either psilocybin or LSD, and you pretty much just go about your day in that, you don't really do anything other than take the substance. Whereas with any magician or witch will tell you that no substance should ever replace actual practice in the craft or practice in ceremonial magic. So what microdosing magic is a different approach to just taking a microdose, whereas there's a lot of intention behind why you're microdosing. So, for example, a regular microdosing schedule might be Monday through Friday, and you take Saturday and Sunday off, and that's been recommended by the great mycologist Paul Stamets. Others, like Jim Fadiman, would recommend taking a microdose one day and then taking 2 days off, then a microdose, then 2 days off. Whereas, and both of those are perfectly excellent cycles, and I've run them myself. But with microdosing magic, what you're doing is actually basing when you take your dose off of either Germanic runes or sacred geometry, and having an intention, a magical intention behind it. So one of the my favorite ones to cycles to run is, again, going back to the pentacle cycle, and you could make one of these on graph paper, and in my book I have instructions how to make one of these, and you just dot out on a graph paper the points of a star or a moon or some symbol that really strikes a chord with you, and then you take the dose on those days. You also don't just take the dose, but when I take my microdose, I first I take the dose, then I meditate for a half hour, and then I switch to visualization for the second half hour. So for me, taking a microdose is actually an hour-long process. So I would say that that's a major difference. And in my book, anybody that's interested in pick it up, they'll see very quickly that there's a big difference in the amount of positive results that you'll see with microdosing magic rather than just microdosing.
Well, what are some of the side effects or dangers of microdosing?
Sure. So if you have any kind of heart issues, you probably shouldn't microdose. If you're taking SSRIs, don't microdose. You could develop or experience, I should say, what's known as serotonin syndrome, which, while not lethal, is just unbelievably unpleasant. And if you have a family history of mental illness, you probably shouldn't be fooling around with any of these things. So, but if you're a healthy person, sound in mind and body, A microdose is not going to really harm you in any way.
So how does one build a psychedelically magical mind? Because I'm sure that's what a lot of people would like to do when they get into microdosing.
Great. So going back to, I was talking about my process of how I take the dose and I'll meditate and visualize. That would be the best way, at least for me, to build that psychedelically magical mind. Because what happens is when you first meditate for that half hour and quiet your mind, the reason you're doing it in a half hour interval is that, so I always microdose with mushrooms because meditation, like mushrooms, take about a half hour for you to feel the effects. Like any experienced meditator will tell you that, the time it takes to really quiet your mind and get into a really deep meditative state is about a half hour. Now, since Gaia loves us so much and wants what's best for us, mushrooms also start to have some effect in the body after a half hour. So once I start feeling a little bit of the effects of the dose, I switch to visualization. Because what this does is it's like adding extra weights to a barbell. Visualization by itself is very difficult. Visualization, when your creative juices and your cellular network are firing, is a lot more difficult. And I found that the more I was able to hold these visualizations, the more I was seeing the results of my spell work in my life. I should say that all psychedelic witchcraft and all psychedelic magic has to do with casting spells on yourself only, not on anybody else, because that would interfere with their will. So the reason I know that this is working, actually, is that you and I are talking right now, Rob. I put it out into the universe, and I did my magic to get more interviews for these books, and here we are.
Wow. Is there a certain age limit when we look at microdosing? A lot of kids listen to this show, and a lot of teens.
Oh.
What should they, what is your words of wisdom when it comes to kids and the taking of microdosing as well as any psychedelic drug?
I would say first and foremost, wait.
Yeah.
If you're a teenager, wait. Let your mind develop. And it's only if you're in your late teens, your brain stops developing around the age 20, 21. Mm-hmm. And so I would strongly encourage you to wait till then. Because your brain is the most important tool you have, and you don't want to be messing with it before it's fully developed. I mean, in the same way, I mean, if you were cooking a pie, halfway through it, you can't now throw new ingredients into that, or you're going to ruin the pie.
That's right.
When the pie is done, then you could put some whipped cream on top, some cherries, and it's going to be a great pie. But if you put the whipped cream and cherries on top while it's still in the oven, you're going to ruin it. So I would say wait a little bit. Mm-hmm. Know what you're doing. Don't ever put anything in your body if you're not sure. Start off very, very small. And on my website, there is a contact form. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions specifically with regards to safety. Because if we're really serious about using these tools of human enlightenment, we have to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Do you think that the use of psychedelics as well as the dosing is becoming more acceptable by society? And do you think there will become a time when it too, like cannabis is up here in Canada, is legal?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, also up in Canada, you guys just went into, or might have just gotten out of, I should say, phase 2 testing for MDMA therapy for PTSD and depression. Yeah. Here in the States, the FDA, which is our governing substance body here, the Food and Drug Administration, they just accepted and are now running tests with psilocybin mushrooms to treat PTSD and depression. The truth of the matter is the science is all on our side, and all of the propaganda of yesteryear, I mean, it's all coming to light how much we've been lied to, especially during the Nixon administration, about all these things. So the good guys are winning, and we should celebrate that, but we should also make sure that we stay very careful and diligent and not do anything foolish or silly with these medicines while we're on the cusp of a greater acceptance of them.
In your opinion, what has been or what is the most rewarding event that has happened in your life due to a spell that you have cast on yourself?
Wow, the most rewarding for a spell that I've cast on myself, I would say so. This past year, using microdosing creativity magic techniques, and again, I outline them in my book. I finished 2 books, and my partner and I are actually about to win the Guinness World Record for magic.
Wow! Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is just from using just my own spells and my own spell work, and not focusing on trying to change anybody else's will, but making sure that my spells align my will with my life. And it's not about putting on a veneer, and it's not about saying the right things. Mm-hmm. You use psychedelics to find your authentic self. Your authentic self is a reflection of the larger universe. That's the cosmos that wanted your perspective. So you have to make sure that your perspective is heard, because you are a slice of all that is.
Tom, we're coming to the time where you and I must say so long for tonight, but I do want to thank you again for coming on the show. And in 35 to 40 seconds, what are your final thoughts for the X Zone Nation tonight?
You free your mind by using your brain.
Wow. It's that plain, it's that simple, and it's that true.
I think so.
Once again, Tom, give our listeners your website as well as where they can get your books, please.
Sure. You could reach me at psychedelicwitch.com or facebook.com/the psychedelic witch. I also have an Instagram account that's at witchydelic, WITCHYDELIC. And my books are available on the website, as long as some videos are on the website. And actually, my partner and I are editing even more videos because we just got back from tour. So there's going to be a lot more coming up. There are some articles that I've written. And if you ever just want to, if you have any questions about anything, I'm always happy to field questions. If you want to yell at me or call me names, the forum is a great place to do that as well. Hopefully we'll keep this conversation going far into the future and change as many lives for the better as possible.
All right, count us in on that, will you, Tom?
4, 3, 2, 1.
There you go. All right, X Zone Nation, our guest this hour has been Tom Hatsis, I should say. Hatsis. His website is psychedelicwitch.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light. Exonation Tom Hatsis is our guest of this hour. He is the Psychedelic Witch. His website is www.psychedelicwitch.com. So, Tom, how can somebody listening tonight know whether or not they, like you, are a witch at heart?
Great question. So in my book, Microdosing Magic, I have a spell called the Witchy Baptism. And I would say that if you were up for trying this spell, you definitely are a witch. So if it appeals to you, and I'll just explain what it is real quick. If it appeals to you, if you hear it, you're like, oh, wow, I want to go do that. Chances are you're a witch. If you hear it and you're like, that is not something I'd ever want to do, you probably aren't a witch. So the Witchy Baptism is a cleansing. So you eat a large meal, typically something high in protein, and you go into the woods, or at least I should say I go into the woods, and I'll draw, using sticks and leaves and rocks, I'll make a large circle on the ground, and then just, using my hand or a stick, I'll draw a star in the middle of the circle, making a pentacle. Then in the center of the pentacle, I will dig a hole. I will then take all of my clothes off, everything, socks and shoes included, and I will roll around on the ground, getting the dirt and the leaves and everything all over me. And then I will squat over that hole, smoke a joint, and defecate. Then I will go into a river and wash myself off. That is the Witchy Baptism. So if you just said gross, you are not a witch. If you just said, yeah, I'm going to do that, you're probably a witch.
I guess up here in Canada, there's going to be a lot of witches because marijuana is legal here in Canada now as of the October the 17th. So there you go.
Yeah.
I
heard.
Yeah. What is the significance of defecating in the circle, in the hole?
So what it is you are making art with the smelliest, stinkiest part of yourself. You're taking your waste. You're taking the thing that all of us get rid of and all of us reject, that part of us that we all reject, and you're turning it into something beautiful and magical.
So you, instead of becoming a Picasso, you're becoming a crap asshole.
Yeah. Sure. If you want to think of it that way, definitely.
You were saying that prior to smoking the joint and squatting and defecating, you roll in on the ground and you get yourself covered with leaves and grass and so on. Now, do you do that within the circle?
Yeah, within the circle, exactly.
So am I correct in understanding that the formation of the circle is something like a protection for you? Yes, exactly. I was speaking before about the power of symbols that speak to you. Yeah. And pentacles have always spoken to me as a very powerful symbol of sacred geometry. So what is the origin of the pentacle? How did the pentacle get associated with the occult, Satan, as well as witchcraft?
Well, that goes back to Pythagoras, and it's Pythagorean geometry, really. How it eventually got associated with witches and witchcraft, I honestly don't know that. And that's a really great question. I'm not sure of when that transition actually took place.
Let's talk about your second book, Psychedelic Mystery Traditions. First of all, what are entheogens?
So the entheogens is a word I came up with to describe different kinds of psychedelic states. I should let your listeners know that I use the term psychedelic as a base word, and I use different kinds of entheogens like entheogen, extheogen, poetogen as adjectives. So, for example, a word that I'm sure your audience is familiar with will be the word entheogen. Entheogen, which I didn't coin, means when you take a psychedelic in a spiritual setting. You're entheogen, you're generating divinity inside the self. Now, sometimes, however, you're not actually generating divinity inside yourself, but outside yourself. Like if you're invoking a goddess or invoking an aeon or even just eating mushrooms and going to try to connect with UFOs, well, that I call an extheogenic experience. You're generating divinity outside yourself. Other terms like, so it's pretty much well understood that psychedelics enhance the creative process, but there's no word for that. So I coined the term poetogen, which means to use a psychedelic for art. So that's what the entheogens are. And I go over in my book the different entheogens because when you look back in the ancient records and the different mystery traditions and magic and witchcraft and ceremony, people were using these kinds of plants and herbs and mushrooms for ways that are not really psychedelic or entheogenic. So I had to come up with different terms to place these experiences within their historical context.
So how did the ancient Christians use psychedelic plants? And, you know, how did they find out? Was it just by chance that this plant is psychedelic, these mushrooms are psychedelic, and those aren't?
Well, yeah, I mean, so those are two different questions. As far as to the second question, how did people find out? That was just centuries of trial and error in the remote past. That many probably got sick or unfortunately passed away, during that long, arduous, human experiment of determining these plants. Now, as far as Christians discovering them, well, most Christians were just pagans converting to Christianity. So in my book, Psychedelic Mystery Traditions, I show how, especially with Paul of Tarsus, how his invention of the Eucharist at the Last Supper is actually what gave pagans the green light to bring their psychedelic brews and their own Eucharist, their for lack of a better word, pagan Eucharist, into their new religion. You also had Christians and pagans often intermarried. In fact, it was one of the things that really the church fathers complained about. So you have this mingling there of different people, and with that, you're going to get different plants and different herbs and different recipes. Now, as far as how Christians actually used psychedelics in the ancient and medieval worlds, I found three, broadly speaking, categories of how they use them. The first is a somnotheogenic way, which is another theogen. Somnotheogen means generating divinity in the dream world.
Right.
And you would have – oh, excuse me?
I said right.
Okay, sorry. And you would have Christians that were finding holy orders to be a little too strict, like they couldn't give up the vices of drinking and going to the pubs and talking to women. So the church fathers said, well, what you need to do is take a strong drink of opium or a strong drink of mandrake and knock yourself into oblivion in Christ. That's what they called it. So you would take this mandrake drink, and again, it causes very vivid and lucid dream states, and you would meet Jesus in the dream realm. So that was one way Christians used these extraordinary plants. Another way they did it was with just celebrations. The same way people today, somebody at a New Year's party who maybe doesn't often smoke cannabis will be like, oh, it's New Year's, I'm with my friends, I'll hit that joint. Well, Christians in history were no different, and they very much loved their Christmas celebrations, their Epiphany celebrations, their Easter celebrations, and going to the Christmas celebrations, which grew out of Saturnalia, which was a Roman festival from December 17th to December 23rd, and was very well known to have all kinds of psychedelic beverages being passed around. Well, that's probably where Christians got that idea. And, also from Yule, the Yule celebrations in Northern Europe, where they were putting mushrooms like probably Amanita muscaria and henbane and other things in their beers and their spirits to communicate with their gods. And, Christians just picked up on this. And again, we have to remember there was no war on drugs back then. People didn't schedule drugs, they scheduled practices. The third way that Christians use these things is actually kind of disconcerting. They seem to be trying to de-paganize the masses using psychedelics in the same way in America in the 1950s, the CIA was trying to use psychedelics to brainwash people for possible use against POWs. And, when you look back in history, you actually find that medieval inquisitors were doing the same thing to people accused of witchcraft. They would drug them in the torture rooms. And then when they started to feel, the effects of this substance, the inquisitor would bring the other priests and say, look, she's crazy. See, the devil's got her. We have to execute her. So that would be, I would say, the three ways in history that Christians use these, and probably many more. It's just the records are very fragmented and scanty, so we have to just pull from them what we can. But again, they did not schedule drugs yet. Yeah. So these Christians wrote openly about their drug use. Theodoric, who was the bishop of Syria in the 5th century, wrote openly that he loved to smoke opium. Smoke opium and read from the Gospels to find the deeper meanings.
Well, we know that many of the rock stars that we have today, or especially in the 60s, used psychedelic drugs all the time. In fact, Paul McCartney, Got to Get You Into My Life, is all about his lust for cannabis.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Sgt. Pepper is pretty much a love letter to the psychedelic state.
Exactly. Mind you, when you look at life and the relationships that all our societies and cultures have, you look at Christmas. Christmas, as you pointed out, was a derivative of the pagan holidays. The Yule log, the tree in the house, eggnog, and the list goes on.
Yeah,
it's a wonder we can't get along in this great big world of ours with all the intermingling that we've had throughout the ages.
Yeah, it would be nice if people realize that we have far more in common than we have differences.
Isn't that the truth? Tom, stand by. We've got to take our final break. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about my guest this hour, Tom Hatsis, the Psychedelic Witch, his website is www.psychedelicwitch.com. And his 3 books are The Witch's Ointment, Psychedelic Mystery Traditions, and Microdosing Magic. And we'll be talking about a couple more of his books when we return on the other side of this break, as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God,
And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Tom Hatsis is our special guest. He is the Psychedelic Witch, and his website is psychedelicwitch.com. You know, I'd just like to mention something. We were talking about Halloween and Christmas before. And in today's society, there are a number of religious organizations and theologies that are disputing the fact that Christmas should be celebrated because it goes against their religious beliefs. And yet, I have not heard any one religious philosophy or organization say the same thing about witchcraft or Halloween, I should say. I find that amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think we're more the live and let live crowd. So,
True.
We try not to get too too worked up over things like that. If people want to celebrate Halloween however they want, who am I to interfere with anybody's will?
True, very true. And plus, Christmas is backed by Santa Claus and Jesus, and Halloween is backed by the American and Canadian Dental Association. There you go. Let's talk about your first book, The Witch's Ointment. Tell us about it.
So The Witch's Ointment is the first ever in-depth study to show the kinds of entheogenic and psychedelic traditions among medieval wise women, and also show how the Catholic Church demonized those practices as trips to the devil.
Oh, gosh.
The Witch's Ointment itself was the vehicle that was used to fall into these trances. I mean, they used things other than ointments, but the ointment became the stereotypical way to fall into these trances because it was a way to demonize women more who were more prone to using these kinds of ointments.
So what would be the content of these ointments?
So the content, we have a few recipes
Okay.
from the early modern period. They mostly contain solanaceous plants like mandrake and henbane. You also get some datura and belladonna and also opium sometimes, things that will knock you into a very deep but lucid and very vivid dream state where you actually feel like you are awake within your dream. At least that's the kind of effect something like henbane and mandrake will certainly have on you. So what these women would do is fall into these trances and they would meet their goddesses, their fertility goddesses in this other world, and the goddesses would teach them the virtue of herbs and stones and how to heal and prophecy and essentially give good advice and help to their communities.
What is the origin of these goddesses? What do we know about their history from where they came and how they were introduced into society and culture?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, this goes all the way back to prehistory, Rob. These wise women of the Middle Ages were worshiping pagan survivals. If we were in the ancient world, we would call, in Egypt, let's say, we would call her Isis. If we were in Greece, we would call her Demeter. If we were in Sumer, we would call her Inanna. Whereas in medieval times, if you were in Italy, they called her Madame Oriente or Epiphania or Benassosia. If you were in France, she was known as Satia or Domina Abundia, the Lady of Good Abundance. In Germany, she was Frau Holt, Frau Helt, or Und Holt, or different all names. So these are all it's the same great goddess that was worshipped in the ancient world, just evolved into these highly localized forms of herself. And that's why you get so many different names for her throughout medieval times that the Witch's Ointment takes place, my book, I should say.
Is there any crossover between the European and the earlier times and the North America Native Indians or citizens?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. All right. With the North American natives prior to the the migration of the Europeans who brought their cultures with them, their beliefs. Was there any such practice being done by shamans or medicine men within the Native Americans?
That's a really great question that I don't have the answer to. I haven't really studied it all, like the indigenous populations and their practices.
Right.
But I'm definitely going to look into that, though. I hadn't even considered that.
So, in your opinion, what is the theological formulation of the stereotypical witch now?
So this is going to take a second. The theological formulation of the stereotypical witch has to do with creating an unreal version of these wise women. So the stereotypical witch is usually a woman, although sometimes it's a man, though usually a woman, who flies through the air on an ointment-covered broom, the ointment made out of the flesh and blood of murdered children. And she will fly to a demonic congregation called the Sabbat, where she will learn evil magic known as maleficia, and she will copulate with demons, and she will drink blood and worship the devil. Now, obviously, nobody was ever doing this in history.
Right.
That is what was just said about these wise women. So that's the theological formulation, and it's mostly derived from fears about what heretics are doing and fears what Renaissance magicians were doing, and mostly fears of the powers of these shamanesses, these local village wise women. So a great way to destroy somebody is to kind of straw man them, or in this case, straw woman them, set up an unrealistic, idea of just how bad these women are to, kind of get their communities to turn against them. And sadly, it was very successful, this campaign from the Catholic Church, very successful.
Well, plus it also drove the scared individuals within the community back to the church, thus giving them more and more control.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, you're spot on with that. In a lot of the sermons that I translated to write the Witch's Ointment, I mean, you have one priest, Bernardino of Siena, he literally says, why are you going to the dog-faced old woman of your community? Like, kind of like he was feeling left out here, like, guys, what about me?
Yeah.
So, that absolutely, you're 100% right about that, Rob. Totally.
Why do you think there's been such a resurgence in the interest and in the number of people who want to practice witchcraft in the 21st century?
I think that people, are coming to terms with the fact that a spiritual life is part and parcel to a human life. I mean, not for everybody, but it is part of the human experience. And I think that as we get more go further along in the sciences, science and scientific methodology is a great way to get rid of dogma. But so while people may be abandoning organized religion, they are finding a new sense of spirituality. And as you said earlier, Rob, that, witches were always seen as, the protectors of nature. And there I agree with you. You have people that, are kind of turning to that because the science is showing that it's like we do have this connection to nature. And, a walk through the woods is good for you and giving a tree a hug is good for you. And you know what? Not just stopping to smell the flowers, but actually speak to them and listen to them is also very good for you. So I think it's just a natural progression of people removing the shackles of dogma, but still wanting that deep spiritual connection.
I would imagine, based on what I've seen firsthand, that people are beginning to realize this in every class of society, and they're getting back to nature, and it's wonderful to watch. It's wonderful to see. Yes, absolutely. How long have you been a practicing witch for?
So I would say absolutely practicing about 20 years of more of the hardcore stuff when I really just accepted it and buckled down and said, yes, this is me, about 20 years. But before that time, I did have a kind of vague spirituality about me. I've always been kind of a fertility goddess worshiper. When the day I was born, I am a worshiper of Gaia. And I will say, she's been in my heart since day one. There's never been a time in my life that I haven't felt like Gaia's had her hand on my shoulders guiding me through life. In much the same way, a Christian might feel that about Jesus, and I don't have any animosity towards Christians or any animosity towards anybody. Or maybe a Buddhist might feel that way about Buddha. I feel that way about Gaia. So she's just always been there, and I guess it took both my brother kind of forcing me, to start, really practicing the craft, and then also discovering magic mushrooms and seeing, oh wow, this really like never did Gaia's voice echo so loudly in my heart than during that first mushroom experience.
No disrespect meant here, Tom, but how do you know if you're taking a psychedelic that what you're hearing is real and not a figment of your imagination?
That's an excellent question, and there's no disrespect taken, because that's, I would think that myself, okay, if I hadn't had that experience. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is, and it's difficult to put it in words, but you can actually tell. You can tell that it's someone and not you. And I would also say that that voice will sometimes tell you things that are rather unpleasant about yourself. And if I were kind of making it all up, mm-hmm, I would be saying, oh, wow, I'm such a great guy and everybody loves me and I can do no wrong, right? I would be very self-congratulating. But the truth is, when I need a talking to from Mother Gaia, I mean, she tells me the things that I don't want to hear, but that I really do need to hear. So, if I were making it all up, I'd be a lot nicer to myself about it. And I would probably tell myself much nicer things than, when Gaia says, hey, you're kind of falling off here, or, you need to be a little bit kinder. If it were my ego, it would just be like, oh, yeah, everything's hunky-dory.
Wow. Isn't that the truth? Tom, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. And X Zone Nation, our guest of this hour is Tom Hatsis. His website is www.psychedelicwitch.com. And Tom and I will be coming back to further talk about witchcraft, his 3 books. And what I'm going to ask Tom when we come back is, if one of you out there listening tonight believes or thinks they might be a witch at heart, how can they be sure? This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome one and all to the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you would like to send us an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And to listen to us 24/7, 365, you can go to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and simply look at their programming guide. And we're heard around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Zeno Media, and of course, Simul Radio and Simul TV. And to find out about the broadcast listing for the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV, visit simultv.com. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is Thomas Hatsis. He is an author, lecturer, and historian of witchcraft, magic, Western religions, contemporary psychedelia, and entheogens, and medieval pharmacopeia. Joining me now is Tom Hatsis. And Tom, welcome to the X-Zone.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. It's great to be here.
What started you on your journey into being the psychedelic witch?
Ooh, well, it happened over time, really. I always had a penchant for things like witchcraft. As a kid, I would watch DuckTales cartoons with my brother and, just totally enamored by the idea of potions and magic and psychic abilities, different kinds of phenomena, things like that. When I was 15 years old, my older brother pretty much forced me to try to make it snow one day. He didn't want to go to school the next day. I don't know if he had a test or something. I don't recall, but he didn't want to have to go to school. So he kind of just grabbed me by the shirt the way, older brothers do. And he said, "You're one of those people. I know you can make it snow. So I need you to make it snow tomorrow." And I had no idea what I was doing. So I went outside and just took some dead grass off the lawn and put it in a pot of boiling water on the stove and then just tried to concentrate on making it snow somehow. And so that didn't work at all. But it was just, it's funny because my older brother had recognized that in me, I think, before really I even had. And so I just started reading books about the occult at that point. I tried and failed to write a vampire novel. This was back when Anne Rice was very big, and I also wanted to write a vampire novel with some witches as well. And I got about 50 pages in, and it just really stunk, so I stopped writing it. And then around the age of 18, I had my first encounter with psilocybin mushrooms, and my first thought after the experience was just like, oh wow, you're not really weird. You've just been a witch your whole life. That's all this is. And so I started writing songs and playing in bands that had kind of an occult or psychedelic bend to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of didn't really like being in bands too much because you have to rely too much on other people that might not have your motivation. So I turned to writing books about the occult and psychedelia instead, because then I only had to depend on myself.
Way to go. Congratulations. And how many books do you have? I believe that you have 3 books. Am I correct?
I've written 4,
Okay.
but 3 of them are in the field of psychedelia. My first book is titled Roller Derby, The Sensation That Caused a Book, Confessions of a Roller Derby Mascot, is about my travels in the roller derby underworld. And my 3 books in the field are The Witch's Ointment was my first, and then my second is Psychedelic Mystery Traditions, and my third is Microdosing Magic, a Psychedelic Spellbook.
Where would you say your strength lies when it comes to the occult?
Mostly from using my own symbols and things that make sense to me growing up.
Right.
I find that, different magical traditions are all well and good, and there's certainly a lot of benefits to that, and you get a lot out of it. I mean, I'm also a member of the OTO, which is a ceremonial magical group, and, their prescriptions are nothing like the things that, I do myself when I'm doing my, weird little witchy things.
Right.
They have their symbols, and of course I go along with all of that when I'm doing ceremonial magic with my peers. But when I'm doing my own kind of stuff or with my magical partner, we use symbols that, really strike us. So, for example, I like my pantheon as far as goddesses and gods are all from ancient Greece and Rome, because those are the ones that make the most sense to me. So if I'm seeking some form of wisdom, if I'm seeking to invoke wisdom in myself, I'll invoke somebody like Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom. Or if I'm doing art magic with my partner, we'll invoke the muses. Again, it's because these symbols, they touch me in a way that other symbols do not, and that makes anyone's magic more powerful.
Tom, why do you think there are so many people in today's society who still fear the word occult?
Because they don't know what it is.
Right.
They don't know what it is. They've seen too many movies. They probably think that something occult, means that it's a bunch of creepy characters in dark robes wearing like claw rings and stuff like that. But I mean, you'll meet a magician, in your day-to-day life, and you'll have no idea that person is a magician at all.
Exactly.
Like they'll look very, very, for lack of a better term, they'll look very normal looking. Whereas I will say on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you meet me, you're dealing with a witch.
Why?
I tend to wear shoes a lot less.
Okay. Do you wear a pointed hat? Do you carry a broom? Do you have a black cat and a kettle?
It's funny. A friend of mine got married last year, and it was the first time at the wedding ceremony I wore a pointed witch's hat. And I did, and it was great. And as far as brooms, they're great for sweeping.
Tell me, do modern witches use the battery-operated vacuum cleaners now? Or do they still rely on the good old handmade husk broom?
I would say it depends on the size of the mess in your kitchen.
There you go.
If I spill some herbs on the floor, I'm going to go right to the broom. But if I spill tomato sauce, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
then I'll go for the Kleenex.
Over the years doing the show now, we're in our 29th year. And I've had the opportunity. Thank you. I've had the opportunity of speaking to many members of the Wiccan community and the different covens and so on. And you know what? They're all so darn nice.
We're great people.
Yeah, I know that, and I've had the pleasure of actually going and meeting these people and being invited to watch some of their ceremonies. And in my opinion, and this is something I try to get across to the listening audience and the viewing audience, is that witches or Wiccans are the keepers of nature. You're very, the founders of Greenpeace, for example, Wiccans, any organization that has the best interest of Mother Earth, you're going to find Wiccans and witches. And I think that throughout history, witches have received a bum rap from the other established theologies because witches and Wiccans posed a threat to the survival of other religions. If it wasn't for witches, we'd have no pharmaceutical industry. We'd have no naturopaths. We'd have no herbology. We'd have a lot less than we do right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good point. It's a very good point. I mean, if you see a piece of trash on the ground, rest assured no witch put it there. We don't do that.
Yeah, we're in the month of October. Next week is Halloween. How do you, as a witch, feel about the way that Halloween and witches are commercialized?
Rob, I got to say, I go back and forth with it. Every now and then, I like to think that this will help normalize the idea for people.
Right. But
then my better judgment says, well, this is really just a kitschy rewrite of what witchcraft actually is. I mean, when you see Halloween decorations of witches, I mean, that's not what a witch a witch looks like me. A witch looks like my partner, my tree-hugging, Gaia-worshipping friends. Like, that's what they look like. We don't all have green skin. And, it's weird. In some ways, it's such an odd thing because you try to legitimize something like that. And I would say that it's probably no different from how a Christian might feel with the commercialization of Christmas.
Exactly.
They probably look at it like, oh, that's cool that it's embracing more people. It's more of a secular American or Canadian or European cultural thing than a religious thing. But for the hardcore Christian, that might be an affront. Now, for me, I don't feel affronted by Halloween. I love Halloween. I'm waiting for the day that they mix Halloween, New Year, and my birthday into the ultimate holiday.
Hey, let's work on that. We've got to take our first break. Tom, please stand by. XO Nation, Tom Hatsis. Hatsis is our special guest. He is the Psychedelic Witch, and his website is www.psychedelicwitch.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And, of course, you're watching us and listening to us around the world on Simul Radio and Simul TV. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie, natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.